Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to put together an MRBP Polaroid back, which stands for Mario RB Polaroid back, or Mamiya RB Polaroid back, whatever you want to call it, but that's the name I've given it, MRBP for short. Here's what it is. Here's basically the layout of all the parts. So I'll go through them in order. These are all the printed parts on this side. You start off with the main part of the back. This is the part that sandwiches between here to allow for the Darkslide to come in here. So that's the other half. And then you put your foam and your mount screws on that side. Then we've got the top cover of the Polaroid back, the door of the electronics area here, the little pouch for the prints that goes into the back, the strap to prevent the prints from falling out, the Darkslide handle for the Darkslide made out of aluminum 100mm by 400mm sheet. We've got a salvage battery, of course. If you're getting one from an OS Plus or a One Step 2, then that battery is pretty good, but we're gonna change the pigtail here so that we can use interchange with other batteries, such as these, which are better. In case that one ever goes out, you will be able to replace it with one of these. Easy to find on Amazon, or eBay, or AliExpress, or electronic stores, wherever you get your electronics components from. Up here we've got, of course, the Polaroid processing unit off of this one's off of a One Step Plus, but you could use it off of a One Step 2 as well. You'll probably more commonly find broken One Step 2s. And then the only thing that I will mention here is that, I don't think I mentioned it in the other video, but to prepare it for this and all of my Polaroid 600 type modifications and creations, on this side over here you've got to shave it off, shave some of it off. Alright, there we go. So that part right there needs to be shaved off over here, and the reason for that is on this part that it mounts up to, this mounting hole in the corner here, I have it attached all the way to the wall. On the actual Polaroid device, it's a rounded hole location, so if you 3D printed that, it snaps off pretty easily, and then that part will lift and then light will flood through, so it's better to make it that way. So that's just one small thing that I didn't mention in the other video that you should know here. Alright, what we've got else is the TP4056 unit that will help you charge your battery with USB-C, a momentary switch to eject, a on-off sliding switch to kill the battery so that you don't accidentally eject it. We salvage the timing switch that normally comes in this area right here of the Polaroid processing unit. So we're going to solder it up into a harness and put it all back in. And of course we've got our wiring, a couple of pigtails that we will need, JST 2.0s, and some shrink wrap, and of course some screws. And so you should have salvaged some screws from the One Step camera, One Step Plus or One Step 2 camera when you took it apart. And then you'll also need some M3x8 Phillips screws. I recommend Phillips so it's easier to adjust on the fly. If you're out in the field, you can cram just about anything in there to adjust them if it's not connecting properly. So let's account for the time at this point. So printing time of all of these components took combined, and cleaning them off of all the supports and everything and making them all nice and clean, took about 8 hours. I would say 7.5 is probably about the fastest that I would do it, but let's just add another half-hour margin of error there. I'll show you some of the tools that I use to get them cleaned up in a moment. But something that you can do as well is really you only need, when you're going to be ready to build, you only need these three things up here to start. So this accounts for about 4 hours worth of stuff here, so you'd want to get that printed right away. And then these are not needed until the end. Your box actually and the strap is the very last thing you really need. This probably is the next thing you'll need to close the electronics in, and then the Darkslide holder as well. So the Darkslide handle, sorry. So yeah, that you can do it in 4-hour plus 4-hour chunks. So the first 4 hours you're going to print your things and then get started on your build, and you'll probably be done with the build by the time the pocket and everything else is all done for you to finish it. And those are all basically just bolt on and glue together to finish up your assembly. Now let's go through some of the tools that I use. So first, with what I use in the cleanup phase for the prints, I use my blades here. Most of the time I'm going to use this chisel. Really love this thing. This is the number 17 or 18. There's two of them. I think there's 18, and then there's this one, and then 17 is the thinner one. I use them both, but on this project I use this one the most, and then for refining I'll bring out the little one. This is the number 22 blade. It also comes in a number 10 that fits the smaller handles like this one, and then this is just your standard number 11 blade. And then I use these type of tweezers to just pick at things and pick plastic out of where I need to. Little Phillips screwdriver for when I'm disassembling the thingy over here and then reassembling things, putting things back together. Calipers to measure out the wires, the foam, and then the Darkslide, measuring out how I'm going to do my cuts on the aluminum material over here. Well, yeah, you're going to use your wire strippers to strip down your wires. Lighter to shrink the wire shrink tubes. Then I use this combined with the Darkslide material to just hold, and then a nice sharp knife of some type to just score it and then cut it, and I'll show you that specifically when we get to that point. And some crazy glue to join the two halves, or if you're making this out of PLA, then you can use PLA glue, whatever you use to glue. That is up to you. I use this stuff because it leaves the least amount of white residue. That tends to be a problem with CA glue. So yeah, this one's been not so bad so far, but it is a little bit runny, so I do use it with this type of little droplet thing to make it more manageable. A couple more things you'll need is felt or velvet tape. This will be to provide some sort of liner and light dam for the Darkslide to travel into, and on top of, in between actually, because you'll create a sandwich with it. And then 2mm thick foam that I pre-cut using a cheap laser. I have I think it was about $250 when I bought it. And that's what I used to run this. So that program, I'll tell you what it is and I'll give you the files for it. But it's not a very difficult pattern to cut out on your own with X-Acto. I have done it manually in the past before. And then for the holes, I really just made a little slit and then slid the screw in there. Same up here. These I just made a slit. Very easy shapes to cut out with your knife. Once you have them on the print if you want, or ahead of time, but on the print is probably going to be a little bit easier. Or you can try to do it with a stencil of some sort. I'll include a file that you could print out to try to do a stencil if you want to draw it on the back or something, or and cut it from the back so it's easier to do. Yep. So here's a closer view of the electronics. What we're gonna do right now, I'm gonna do it off camera, and then I'm gonna get it ready so you could see what I mean. But I've designed it so that you can build the harness outside of the assembly, and then once you have it all ready, you could just slide everything right into the film back unit, the 3D printed parts, and then just solder the parts to the two ends, the positive and negative, to the motor, and that's all you would have to do at that point. So we're going to do that now, but let me just explain to you what I have here. Is this is the battery, the original battery. I'm going to cut that off and then add that on there. I'm going to solder this onto there. I should have made that a little bit longer to make it easier to deal with, but I think that'll be fine. I'll figure it out. And then I'll obviously wire the on-off in between the momentary switch and the board so it can kill the power, give it power, kill power, etc. I mentioned the relay switch earlier. This is what keeps the power going, to keep the rollers going until it reaches a certain point where that switch turns off. Then the power is totally killed. So basically this takes over after you give it the initial push with that button. And then there's 6 wires that you'll need, and then those lengths will be included in the instructions, the written instructions. I pre-cut them all the time, so it makes it easier. And then I'll go ahead and put everything together right now. I didn't show the soldering iron, but this is the one that I use. It's a super cheap one off of eBay. I just got it in a pinch because it was able to deliver overnight and I really needed it. And you know, hasn't been so bad so far. It's worked out. I do need to scrape and sand the tip to make it good every now and then, because sometimes it doesn't work as well. So I'll probably need some better tips. But yeah, that's what I use with electronics. So I'll go ahead, like I mentioned, and do that off camera, and then we'll come back and then show you what that harness looks like when it's all put together. Alright, I've got the harness all assembled here. Everything is ready to go. I got the battery connected to where the battery needs to go. This will end up getting soldered to the negative terminal of the motor, and then this will be the positive terminal of the motor. So one thing that I want to point out right here, and I also made a note of it in the instructions, is the way that, and let me unplug the battery here so I don't short anything out. Even though the switch is off in the off position, still just for safety's sake, let's not mess with any live power, because we've got 2 loose wires here. But where was I at? Oh yeah, very important. So you'll see this switch. Now this switch slides in. This is the timing switch, the timing relay switch that keeps the motor going, power going to the motor. Now the way you have to solder these is you have to solder these going into the board. And if you can see how I've done it there, you see how they're coming in this way. This switch goes down this way into its opening, so you want the wires to come in from that way. You'll have to do a really careful soldering job on there. I don't have much experience soldering, and I was able to do it with just, you know, tweezers and then holding this down with a clamp device. But yeah, that's about it. You just solder them sideways. If you solder them from the top, what'll happen is when you put this cover on, it'll press down, and it might kick your eject cycle into just kind of like an infinite cycle, I've noticed. So if you do that because you can't do this way, then you'll have to shave the very bottom of that switch a little bit, just so it fits nicely. So keep that in mind as you assemble it. But yeah, everything else is built. You know, you got we already talked about the battery terminal here, where that connects, but your positive wire will go to the center of your on-off switch, and then from the on position of the switch, the slider switch, you'll have one of those going to the eject switch, and then one of those going all the way over to one side of the relay switch, and then the other terminal for the eject switch will come all the way to the other side of the relay switch, and then from then on we'll go to the motor. All right, so now let's put everything together. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put these 2 pieces together, and I've already got some cut felt tape here, or velvet tape, whatever you call it in your part of the world. This is going to basically act as a liner where the Darkslide is going to pass through. If you've got the felt on both sides, when the felt is together, it'll help prevent light from leaking through from anywhere in that seam. But I also have a mechanical lip here built in as well to add some extra protection. So you want to put the pieces together first to make sure that they are flush. So we look here, it's, you know, good and flush. The seam is not so bad. It's not going to be perfect because obviously you're mating plastic parts, but just double check anyway. It looks acceptable to me, as good as it's going to get. All the way around, yeah, okay. So that's good. So now we're going to start adding the felt. So first we'll start off on the easy side here. So there's a big part that goes here, and then there's two long parts and the skinny part. So let's start off with the big part because that's the easiest. And the big part, you're not going to go all the way to the end. You're just going to go right here, and it's got to overlap around the edge a little bit. So we'll do that there. Make sure it's nice and pressed in into the corners. That side as well. All right. And then you press it down over here, so which is over here. And it's all right if you cover those holes. Those holes are not needed up on this side. The screws that come in will only come in on this side, and they won't go down in there all the way. So I'll probably speed this up in a moment to get through this part of it, because it's going to be just about the same on the other side. Make sure it's really on there. All right, so let's mate the parts together again to make sure that there are no obstructions all the way around. All right, it's looking good. So we are ready to tape. Or sorry, not tape, glue. All right, so gluing. Again, I've got this crazy glue here, this Loctite super glue, the professional grade. I've got this tip on there to help guide a little bit more. So I'm just going to be very, very conservative with it, and just run a quick line along there. Here I'll go a little bit more crazy. I'll put some more there to really get it stuck in there, and then here I'm going to do, again, super quick along there, so I'll let that hang out there. And then here in this channel here, I'll squeeze quite a bit. I'm only in the middle, because if not, some will squeeze around when you get closer to the edges. So that's fine. And then a little drop there, and then a little drop there. All right, now let's put it together without taping your fingers to anything. All right, so you can press it down now. Make sure you're not touching anywhere where there may be glue that'll get stuck to your fingers, and then it'll stick your fingers to this thing. All right, hold it down for a little bit. If you've got clamps like I do, I really like these here, then you can probably clamp one side there, and then carefully clamp here maybe. All right, so we're gonna put this off to the side over here to hold down, and since we've got the glue out, we're gonna do one more little glue job for the moment. Move some things out of the way here. Move that out of the way there. So this little knob here glues onto this part of the print box, the print storage box. And that is what will ultimately grab onto this little latch here. We need to seal it up, so we're going to put this in place there, bring out our tweezers so we don't glue our hands, add a little drop of glue there, make sure we have this aligned properly. I like aiming the seams down so it's not as visible, and we'll pop it in there and press it down. So that one will go to the side now, and they'll come back later with a little strap. First things first, I don't want any beads of glue around the outside to where if I touch them on the finger I will ruin things or leave marks on things. So everything is looking really good. Everything is looking glued. That is fine. Is we want to go ahead and feed the harness in and then start getting the harness, wiring harness situated. All right, so the way this works now is when you have it to the side here like so. Let me zoom in. Move some stuff around here. All right, so this is made so that you take this part here first and you slide it in there. You wiggle it and you push everything in through. All right, so now you've got your wire over here on this side and your switch, timing switch there. All right, then you move stuff around so that you get the board, the USB-C board over here. Now you move it in like so into that area, and then you press it down and it should snap into place. There's something that'll hold it into place. If that doesn't work, then you'll probably need to shave the board a little bit, but it should. Most of the ones that I've been doing, you should be able to press it and you'll hear a snap like so. So that'll already be in place there. I mean, it's not permanent, so if you ever need to redo anything or you want to change the color of your housing or something like that, or you need to repair something, you could just, pop something in here and then pop it back out gently. And yeah, so let's move some of this stuff over here. This black wire should go now all the way down in through as well, because that is the negative wire for the motor. So we'll thread that on through. We'll leave the battery terminal that way. And then we'll want to unscrew this nut here. And then position that switch to put together. Okay. So that's good enough. And then how I tighten it is I just use my tweezers as kind of a wrench. It's really hard to do while trying to look at the camera instead of down at what I'm supposed to be looking at. So, but that's the general thought. That should hold nice and snug. And then this switch, I like facing it so that see, when it points up to the white wire, it's in the on position, and then down to the empty terminal, it's the off. So I want my on usually to point towards the button. That way I know, boom, on, that makes it live. So I'm going to put the wire down that way, and then this should pop in and snap a little bit too. If not, you may need to add some glue to help keep it in place. But it is a bit of a friction fit. So if you do ever find that you press it down, then you'll need to, like so, then you'll need to just pop it back into place. Open it up and pop it back into place. All right. So that's that. And then we'll put in our battery later once we have put everything into place, but the battery will just essentially go right here. And then this area is already designed so that if you needed to put in the replacement battery, again, this one should be pretty okay, but if it ever wears out on you, then this one will fit right in there nicely too. And then this is a pretty common size. There's different strengths too, or different capacities out there, so you've got a lot to choose from. I'll put some links in the instructions for you as well. So off to the side there. All right, so now we're going to start putting in the processing unit. So that should already be one whole unit. Check it, make sure all the gears are nice and clean and pressed into place where they need to be. The hinge is working. All right, so we're gonna start putting that into place. Now pay attention to, see this sits, you'll see the 4 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4 here. Those you want to line up, and then the wires you want to have on this side of that little wing there, because that'll go over and that'll protect it from getting in the way of some of the actions that happen there. So let us put this into place here, and then we'll bend that a little bit over that way carefully as to not put it out of place. And then we are going to, let's see, that switches is good. Let's see, is it in there good? Okay, it is now. All right, now I'm going to solder the wires together onto the motor, and then I'll be right back. All right, so I've got my wires soldered onto the motor. I already added the 4 screws on all 4 corners to hold the processing unit onto the film back. I guess one of the last things we can do over here now is slide this in the back here, and let's get a couple of screws out. And just screw that down. And then do not over tighten as you screw into your plastic parts, because they are just big enough to allow the screw to go in and to get a little bit of bite. So always make sure that the holes are a bit on the tight side and don't over tighten. As soon as you feel like it's just about there, then let off and you should be good. All right, make sure that the door part is still on its hinges, the rollers are still where they need to be. Now let's start adding the outer shell parts. So this one, the best way to do it is you bring it in and clip it onto these areas, and you press it a little bit like so as you clamp it down. All right, so you have to move wires. You'll see the wires in there if they're in the way, so you'll move them out of the way, move them off to the side here this way, and then let's start closing this down. It happens. I wasn't being careful there. Do that again. All right, and now we're going to add the door area, so that you have to slide in from the top and slide it in a little bit there, and then make sure you look all the way around that it is nice and closed, and it is. grab some more screws. And apply them like so. All right, now let's open up the door, make sure it opens. It does. Everything looks good up in there. I don't see any issues at all. So now let's add the motor. Sorry, the battery. I'm so excited. Let's turn the... All right, something's up because the motor's spinning, but it's still continuously going. So that means to me that that one little sensor is either not making contact or it's pressed down too much. It happens when you're adding wiring there. Let's try it here though. Here it's not working, okay. See, so this switch right here is always a little bit of a problem. I tried to solder to the side to prevent it from pressing down. You see there it. Okay, no worries. So what we're going to do is we're going to unplug the battery and we're going to shave that switch off a little bit. So let's fish that out a little bit, and then where is our flush cutter? So very carefully nip the tip. And now let's put it back in to its slot here. To test it. With the battery. So this is probably the one area that is the most difficult to troubleshoot. This little timing switch. You need it so that you can have the continuous cycle, because if not, it'll keep spinning and spinning and spinning, or you'll have to wire the motor manually. There we go. Okay, but it's not holding in. I'm gonna leave this all in here so you can troubleshoot with me, because you're gonna be dealing with some of these same things, so it's best to know how to alleviate them. And that little switch is gonna be where you will spend a lot of time. You can kind of see that we were just about done. To me, it feels like it's not going in all the way. We got the rollers coming off on this side, which is always annoying. I think that might hold. Let's see. It always loves falling off of this part of the hinge over here. It's just one of the most annoying things really about this job, is just this hinge over here. It's funny too because there'll be times when you want it to purposely come off of that hinge and it just won't. And then just automatically out of nowhere it'll just come off of that hinge. So something to deal with. So manually it works, but it's just not feeding. It's just all the way in for the first time. Not too bad of a deviation. It could have taken more, but we'll see what happens here. All right, there we go. Didn't mean to press that button, so I'll glue it in a moment, but all right, that works. So it's looking good. Next step here, we will close up the door because it looks like we're just about done here. Actually, what I will do is, just because this one does tend to pop out, I'm gonna add just a little bead of glue there to help hold it in place. I don't think that'll spill in there. All right. So on the door. Again, don't be too tight on these. And these little screws, you get them all from dismantling the 1-step 2, 1-step plus cameras to get the processor. So I think I mentioned in that video, you're going to want to save all those screws that you can. You'll be using them on this mod as well as the Polaroid Go back. All right, we're good here. Everything's looking good all the way around. We're closed here, we're closed there. Let's see the door. Yep, door right there. Everything's looking good. Still works. All right. Cool. What will we do next? Since we've got the door assembled already, let's put that together. Oh, sorry, not the door. The this thing. This film holder. So the best way to get these screws and this wrench is if you buy cold shoes to put onto some of my other cameras like the Nano Pano or the Ligero LG. That is a common cold shoe that I use across all those, and they come with a couple of these screws that are not used in any of the builds. I don't use them. This is the only place that I use them. So if you build just like I do and follow my instructions, you'll probably stockpile a lot of those as you use cold shoes. All right, that's tight enough. Let's straighten the little rubber thingy. And I'm not gonna latch it yet because I see that it is still a little bit wet. I noticed that I did not clean this part though. So, I don't want to be doing that with a knife. I shouldn't be doing that. So I'll do this instead and clean that up. So you can see it's taking shape here. It has not been too difficult of a build so far, I don't think. So let's finish up the rest of the unit here. So now I'm going to add the seals, the foam seal. I decided, because I print this face down, that it wasn't going to make sense to try to match the mechanical seal of the RB67 on this surface. So for the sake of printability and for the sake of not having any light leaks, I decided to just design it so that you'd have to cover the whole perimeter here with some light sealing foam. So let's get started and add that in here. Final stretch. All right, so it's a 2mm foam. It's nice and thick, so it will help fill in all of the mating areas of the RB67 so that you don't have to worry about light leaks. So now let's do the last bit of stuff on the outside. We're going to add just slightly enlarge the holes or clear the holes with just the tip of the screwdriver. And then these, I like installing them so that until I see the very edge of the thread go under the foam. So about, I don't know if you can tell, move it over this way, about like right there. It ends up being, it should be about 4mm from that to the plastic, not the foam. So 365, 375 ish, somewhere around there. So we'll loosen them up as we go, once we try to install it onto the RB. Okay, looks about right. All right, so at this point, we are just about done. The very last thing that we have left to do is the Darkslide. Very last step now. This is our Darkslide material. It is 100mm by 200mm aluminum stock. I believe it's about 0.5 millimeter thick, or probably 0.3mm thick. I'll put the link in the instructions. So we're going to want to cut this down to 107mm. Unfortunately, I could not get it to be 100mm. The Darkslide did need to be a little bit longer to cover enough area, so we've got to cut out 170mm, and then you'll have 107mm, sorry, and you'll have some left over. All right, so the way I like doing it is I just like set dialing it into my caliper here, and then using the edge up here to score it. I run it over there and then I score it there. I've got my score. So what we're gonna do now is we gotta put a deeper score in it on both sides, actually. All right, so let's go to the first side. So what I'll do is I'll use something like this type of box cutter. These tend to be pretty sharp and pretty thick. But we're going to start with one light score, and then we're going to build it up, going a little bit firmer and firmer each time you go, watching out for any fingers, etc., etc. So that's probably scored enough. At this point, it's probably maybe I want to score this side too, just in case, to make it a little bit weaker. So I'll do my light one. Let's start working it. All right. So let's take it and start wiggling it. Oh, nice. There you go. So this short one, save it for another project or to use around your shop. You could cut nano pano dark slides from here if you don't want to buy the business cards. You could do that as well, and that might work. Okay, so I like this edge. This is the one that we cut, so this is the one that we're going to glue in here. And it'll go in here like so once we remove the tape. And I like this edge here to round off. So the way I do that is I grab some sandpaper and then I just do this as a turning motion. I flip it around. And then you'll round it. We should probably take this blue tape off. It's no longer needed. All right, that's good. That's nice and round. Some of these edges seem like they were still a little sharp from the manufacturer. They didn't knock the burr off there at the edge. Now I'm doing it the easy way, but or the hard way here, but the easy way would be to just take your orbital sander and run it, and then you could do that. But if you don't have an orbital sander and you just have sandpaper, then just do that and you'll be fine. All right, now let's test it and make sure that it slides in there. And let's see how far it goes. Perfect. Let's see, let me make sure. Perfect. So I was a little short, so probably needed to be more like 108 millimeters. So keep a note, 108 millimeters is where you're gonna want to be. So we're gonna give it some room here when we tape it, when we glue it down. So let me just put it into position already. I'm gonna put the nice side. Well, they're both nice sides actually. Nice side facing down. All right, so now let's start adding our glue. And I'm also going to want to add some in the corners here and in the top, because we're going to put down this top cover over here right on top to hold everything in place. So first let us get this guy in there. That's good right about there. Right. A little bit of glue on the metal itself. I'm not very clean when it comes to glue. Look at that right there is a perfect example. Alright, make sure you don't have any glue on your fingers, because you're going to press down right now. Alright, and here's where we'll want to have something to wipe really quickly with. And then I'll bring out these clamps again. Alright, we're going to let that dry for a moment while I finish debriefing you on this installation. So as of this moment, and once we're completed, I already mentioned the 8 hours total print time that it's going to take to do the whole build. To disassemble the 1-step plus or the 1-step 2 to get the processor end of it, it's probably going to take about 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. The print cleanup itself, once you get them off, I would say about 10 to 15 minutes depending on your print quality. Cutting the seals in the foam, if you laser cut them, obviously it's going to be like about 5 minutes. If you hand cut them, I've done it in about an average of 15 to 20 minutes. Preparing the wiring, cutting it down to the sizes that you need, about 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. Actually putting the wiring harness together, soldering what you need to, 20 to 30 minutes, depending on your skill level with that. And then the Darkslide, which we just did now, took us about 5 minutes or so to put that together. Assembly itself, the steps that I went through to put this all together, took about 50 minutes. At least in the tutorial, took about 15 minutes. So if you're not talking through the whole thing, it'll probably take you less time than that. So my total build time for this specific unit in this tutorial has been a total of the 8 hours print plus about 2.5 hours of total production and assembly time. So 8 plus 2.5, that's what you're looking at. And that 2.5, you could have done it in between, that you could have printed the parts that you needed for 4 hours, then done your 2 and maybe 2 hour assembly, and then printed out the last few bits and then slapped them on, like this part here, and then the Darkslide handles. So let's take this out of here now. It should be nice and dry. All right. And there you have it. The MRBP back from Sparkplug. I hope you sell several of them. They are not going to be heavy volume items because, of course, there's a finite amount of 1-step plus and 1-step 2 cameras, and not all of them are super cheap. But yeah, it's a good opportunity to make a few extra bucks because that 2.5 hours of labor and 8 hours of print time can translate to about $400 to $500 just on this unit. You know, sell a few of them, sell one a month for some extra cash, sell a couple of them so you can buy yourself the new Polaroid camera. Whatever you do, I think there's a lot of opportunity to at least move a few units and take advantage of the license that way with this one. Anyway, if you have any further questions or have any questions, at all, go ahead and send me a message. I will be more than happy to answer it. If you want to be highlighted on my Instagram page as somebody who is offering these, let me know and I'll do a post and a story for you and leave it on my page so that people know that you're selling it. And yeah, let's make some bucks together and get some of these out there in the world.